Now, for several months early in the football season, there was great expectation of a Premier League battle between the three top teams in the league, Manchester City, Chelsea and Liverpool. But over the holiday period, Manchester City have pulled away. At the moment, they're 11 points clear of second place Liverpool, who have a game in hand, and Chelsea are 2 points further behind. So a lot of people are saying it's a one-horse race and it's all over. With the one game in hand and to play City, I'd give Liverpool a squeak, but it's no more than a squeak. City have ground it out week after week, and they played Chelsea on Saturday and they ground it out again. And I'm joined now by Liam Brady and John Giles to discuss the weekend's football and where it leaves the Premier League. John, City weren't, in my view, terribly impressive. Lukaku had two very, very good chances for Chelsea, and we'll get to Lukaku in a minute. But they did grind it out, and they got another 1-0 and a big one against the team, one of their biggest rivals, for whom it was a must-win game.
Yeah, they didn't. Well, they had at least one great chance. Liverpool, Lukaku. I think Mr. Tuchel wasn't very happy with him reading the papers. But as you say, City have grounded out. They're not giving goals away. They're conceding very, very few goals, and it was a huge match for them to do what they did. You know, whatever. I think Sterling has come back to form, Eamon. I know De Bruyne was given man of the match. I thought Sterling was man of the match. So I think he's made a huge difference for them in the last few weeks. So if he's back on form and trying and play the way he can play, he's been a big plus. But they are grinding them out, as you say. I mean, they're not giving many goals away. I don't think it's over. I think there's an awful lot of matches to go yet. And obviously they're in a very, very strong position. But I wouldn't say it's over by any means. There's a lot to do yet. Yeah,
there's 16 matches left. In Liverpool's case, 17. Just to give a stat there for City, they've scored 54 goals and conceded 13. Liverpool actually have scored 55, but they've conceded 18. Liam, the situation with Lukaku, as John said there, Thomas Tuchel had a go at him afterwards. He wasn't happy. He had a good chance early on, and he passed to Ziyech, who was well offside. Then, I have to say, Ederson made a brilliant save from a situation where you'd expect Lukaku to score. But looking at City, Liam, and in particular at the front three for Saturday's game, it was Sterling, Grealish, and Foden. So they don't have a real out-and-out 20-goal-a-year striker. What did you make of them?
Well, I thought there were good winners, Eamon, to be honest. I thought they were better than Chelsea on the day. Although Chelsea, as you mentioned, and John mentioned, did have a couple of chances, particularly Lukaku's when he was clean through and Ederson made that save he referred to. But I thought City were good. I thought their pressing was really impressive again. It led to a great chance that Grealish had in the first half when Kepa saved from when he was clean through on goal. That all came from the midfield really going about the pressing business well. And actually the goal that De Bruyne got was from them winning the ball back around the centre circle. So I haven't really seen Man City have a hard game in a long time, apart from the one they had at Arsenal a couple of weeks ago.
Yes.
I think they've been good winners, and perhaps the fact that they're not winning as well as they should, Eamon, is the thing that we often refer to, is they haven't really replaced Aguero.
That's right. Yeah, and he's kind of irreplaceable. The other factor in that equation, I'll put it to you, Liam, and then to John, they've signed Ruben Dias as a real top-class centre-half who they left on the bench against Chelsea for a reason that he may have... They've had a lot of COVID in the club as well, and he played John Stones, but they're not giving goals up, Liam. And as you both know, in your days with Juventus particularly, and in John's days at Leeds, the foundation of a championship-winning team is not giving cheap goals away, isn't it? Or any goals, if you can avoid it.
Well, they've conceded 13, and you refer to Liverpool conceding 18.
Yeah.
And those 5 goals probably make all the difference. Instead of being wins for Liverpool, they've turned out to be draws.
Yeah.
And that's the points difference that we're looking at the moment. So City, and we refer to over the weeks, have really improved defensively.
Yes.
With the signings he's made and the organisation he has. Doesn't concede many goals from set pieces, whereas that used to be a weakness. So they have really improved, but they've been the most consistent team. Like a month ago, us three were talking that it was a 3-horse race.
Yeah.
Now, as you said, it's only really Liverpool that have a bit of a squeak.
Yeah. Yeah, John, the front three for City, I don't like to be critical of them when they're so far 11 points clear. But just one oddity, really. Jack Grealish for 100 million. Now, they were in all summer to try and get Harry Kane. Apparently, Levy wanted 150 million. They weren't prepared to pay it. But they did pay 100 million for Jack Grealish. Is he a £100 million player, John? Because I don't think he is.
Well, he's not at the moment. I mean, they have him playing mostly on the left wing.
Yeah.
When he was at Villa, he didn't actually play on the left wing. He played sort of left side of midfield, where he could wander around a bit. So, as he's expected to play on the left wing is to beat players on the fullback, particularly when he gets the ball. And, that wasn't his game at Villa. He can go past people from the middle of the field more so than playing wide on the left wing.
Yeah.
But, Mahrez is away at the moment. They've got players that can play in that position. Whether he'd play there. But, as far as the goal scoring element is concerned, I mean, as you said, they did sign this. They did try to sign Harry. They couldn't get him. It looked like they had him, and then they didn't get him. So they're stuck with. But they're scoring enough goals, Eamon, between them.
Yes.
They're sharing the goals around. I mean, Foden get a goal. Sterling is good. Now, if Sterling gets back in and plays like he did on the weekend and seems to be settled, he'll make a big difference to them, in my opinion.
Yeah, and Liam, just before we leave that match, or at least before we leave the City element of it, he got Alonso booked very early in the game, first 10 minutes, I think, and that put Alonso in a bad place. And there is a sort of pep in his stride now, Sterling, that wasn't there early in the season. And when he is on, he is good. Yeah,
and he can score goals as well. No, he was very, very sharp, and a bit unlucky that he didn't score a couple of times. He just pulled it wide. But as John has just said, they still have goals between them. Foden will chip in, Sterling will chip in. They'll get goals from set pieces with the centre backs.
Yeah. Bernardo Silva is another one. He gets goals. Gundogan, he gets goals.
Yeah, they share them all around, don't they? And, that's another way of winning it. And it looks very, very difficult for anybody to go to peg them back now. I think Liverpool would have to go on an unbeaten run, a bit similar to Man City.
Yeah.
And when they do play City, and I have a feeling it's April time, that clash, and it's at the Etihad.
Yeah.
So it's not going to be easy for Liverpool. I think they'll have to go on an unbeaten run or not unbeaten run, a winning run.
Yes.
Of something like 10 games if they're going to do it, Eamon.
Right. John, let's look at Lukaku and Thomas Tuchel. He strangely left Mason Mount on the bench. He brought him on in the second half. And Mason Mount is a top-class player, in my opinion. He's a goal scorer as well, but he's good. He's comfortable on the ball. He's a great attitude. Don't know why he left him on the bench. Very, very strange. But his relationship with Lukaku, who was whinging after the game or complaining after the game, now he's made a good impression on me, Thomas Tuchel, in many respects. He may have a go at his players. He was jumping up and down on the bench on Saturday like a mad thing. But he's not having a go at officials and stuff like that. And generally he seemed very impressive. But the Lukaku thing hasn't worked, and it's 98 million they spent.
Yeah, he's Lukaku upset the club a couple of weeks ago, and with the comments he made in the Italian paper, as we know, it caused a lot of trouble. But they seem to get over that. I think he's done a really, really top class job Tuchel, Eamon.
Yes.
But he might be, Amy, there might be a fault in him that he's a little bit impatient.
Yeah.
You know, like all players can make mistakes. Now, he's had to go publicly at Lukaku. That might have something to do with what happened a couple of weeks ago.
Yeah.
But as a manager, players don't miss things on purpose, Eamon. They don't miss passes. They don't do things. And he's jumping up, and he was jumping up. Yeah. And he demands a lot, which is right in a manager. But sometimes you can overdo the demand and have no feeling for the player in making the mistakes that they make. Do you know what I mean?
I do indeed, yeah, I do.
Like we all make mistakes. You made mistakes, Liam made mistakes. And you don't need the manager to get down on your back, to say, what the hell are you doing? The first thing you said, well, I didn't mean it. Sometimes the players can be lazy and not get back. I can understand that where you scream at them and tell them to get back. But somebody that makes mispasses a ball or Lukaku missed the chance, he's jumping up. And he's obviously not pleased, but no manager's pleased when players do that. But you have to go with that sometimes, Eamon. And and if you don't, then it really upsets the player, and you lose them altogether.
Yeah, just a point about Lukaku's confidence, Liam. I thought in the first half when he played Ziyech in, and Ziyech was offside, and he really could have gone himself. If a striker's not confident, they do tend to look to lay it off rather than go themselves.
Well, yeah, he's put pressure on himself by coming out, being critical of it. And now the spotlight's on him. And perhaps he's feeling that a bit. And Tuchel has responded over the last couple of weeks by being critical of Lukaku into media interviews and so forth. He didn't spare him yesterday. So I think that's a very fragile situation between those two, I think Tuchel has a bit of the Mourinho about him. John might be right. I think his fault is, it's not my fault, that the results have not been what they should be. And he's picked on a few players, and Lukaku being the main one. So I haven't, I think Tuchel's obviously done a wonderful job to win the Champions League when, coming in. Yeah. Last winter, wasn't it? He came in. Yeah. And he turned things around and he got the defence right and he got. But just lately, a bit of Mourinho about him being critical of the players. Okay, you say he's not critical of officials and so forth, but I think he has singled out a few of his players for. When, as John says, when things should be aired in the dressing room and not through the newspapers and media.
Yeah, just to say in passing that he's missing some very good players. Reece James is out with an ACL, which is a knee ligament, bad stuff. Ben Chilwell with the same injury, and of course Mendy, the goalkeeper, who's been outstanding, is away at the African Cup of Nations. John, just to ask you about the goal, I thought. Kepa, the Chelsea goalkeeper, or Arrizabalaga, as he's known on the BBC, I thought he might have got it, but I thought he was unsighted. Now, the guy who missed the tackle on De Bruyne, De Bruyne got away from our old friend N'Golo Kante. People saying it was a great goal. Pep said it proved what a great player De Bruyne was afterwards. What do you think?
Well, I think managers do that, Eamon, with their own players, they're all the geese are swans, as they say. But I thought the keeper, Eamon, I looked at it at the replay, we all looked at the replay, and I thought he made a move to the right.
Yes, he did.
Before De Bruyne shot the in other words, it wasn't a great deal of power. It was very, very good shot, but there wasn't a great deal of power in it really to beat the goalkeeper. But I think he made at least one step to the right, and then couldn't get back.
Right.
Couldn't get back to it. I don't know why. Maybe he was unsighted. He wanted to see the ball. I don't know, but I think he made a step to the right. I think Ian Wright said it after the match. Yes. I was watching it on the telly, and he said that he slowed it down and showed him going to the right. Just before De Bruyne shot, and he was just out because when he was going past them, there was an awful lot of room, between the goalkeeper and the post for that particular side of the goal,
Yeah. Now, John, Liverpool, that match wasn't on live television, but I watched it last night on the BBC. Without Salah and Mane, they really struggled. It took them until the 43rd minute for Fabinho to sort of scramble, the goal scramble. He got it in the net in the end. They got a couple of more goals in the second half, really to put away Brentford, but they were not impressive. Brentford had chances, and it will give the board at Liverpool, who are really messing Mo Salah around in a big way, it'll give them something to think about, because without Salah in particular, but also without Mane, they look a bit of a blunt instrument.
Well, they're bound to, Eamon. You know, like you're not going to carry reserves as good as the players that you're leaving. You talk Salah and Mane. I mean, they're two world-class players, and it's a huge miss for Liverpool to be without them. And how can you replace them? I mean, you can't have two players in the reserves as good as them. They have Jota and they have Firmino, and you know they've got a good backup. But it's very difficult to do your stuff without these two players leaving you. And I get your point about Salah and the way they're behaving over. They seem to have a policy at Liverpool, like they have in America. If a player gets to a certain age, it doesn't matter how well he's doing. This is what they're going to do. I think Klopp might have a bit of control over it, but he won't have the control that some managers have or had in the past, where they can say, "No, I want his contract sorted out. This is what I believe in." So it's very difficult for Klopp. If he would want to sign Salah up and get it done. But you have these people in the club, they're Americans, I think, and they have this policy in their own sports in America that if a player gets to a certain age, that's what they're going to do, regardless of how good he is.
Yeah.
I don't agree with it. I know you don't agree with it. If I was them, I'd sign Salah up today. He's done his stuff. He's proven himself. He's a world-class player, and he should be given, I think they should give him a new contract straight away.
Liam, before I want to go back to the League Cup match against Arsenal, Liam, which ended 0-0. Arsenal with 10 men last Thursday, second leg to come this Thursday. But before I do, there was a very good and authoritative piece in the Sunday Times of the weekend. The fact of Salah's situation. He's on 200 grand a week, which is, of course, a lot of money. Anthony Martial at Manchester United is on 300 grand a week. Pogba's been offered 500,000 a week by United not to walk away at the end of his contract for free, which he's entitled to do now. And there are lots of other players who are on huge money. So Mo Salah has every right to be aggrieved, doesn't he?
Well, if he is aggrieved, or he certainly you would use that as your negotiating tools, Eamon.
He has said now he's aggrieved. You know, he said, it's not fair.
Well, and that's the kind of money. That's the kind of money he's been paid, and I think Aubameyang is on a lot more than Salah.
350. Yep.
And these players are not really contributing. Where you look at Salah, and he's week in, week out, he delivers. Every match he seems to, score goals or make goals, and I'd be in John's corner. I'd be saying Liverpool have got to sort it out, and he's an exceptional player, and he can make the difference between winning a title or winning the Champions League and not winning. So I thought a couple of months ago when I can't remember, I think he scored a hat-trick in one game, and we were talking about this as well. We were saying, do it now, get it over and done with, you know?
Yeah.
You don't want this kind of thing hanging over you or being aired in public. He's a great player, and you just mentioned two players there. Pogba, are you serious that United have offered him 500 grand a week to stay?
Yeah, well, the reason is, Liam,
I'd give him 500 grand to go.
But the thinking there is that they paid 90 million for him, and he can walk. He can talk to another club as of this month. Now, just to go back to something which is relevant to Salah and Mane, Liverpool's inability to beat Arsenal, Liam, with 10 men. Xhaka off after just about half an hour for a brutal tackle on Diogo Jota. There's no surprise in Xhaka being sent off in an important game, but this was madness, wasn't it?
Yeah, well, I don't know. I watched it, Eamon, and he didn't see the player. He didn't anticipate the player that was going to get to the ball, and he just took his leg out. I don't think it was, totally intentional. It was clumsy, and you expect that of him. I remember he got sent off against Man City in one of the early games of the season when he jumped into the tackle. He's an idiot,
Yeah.
There was a joke going around that the postponed game, between Spurs and Arsenal, he still got sent off. So they had 0-0 and Xhaka a red card. He's an idiot. But Arsenal were put up a really spirited performance. They got men behind the ball. They rode their luck a little bit, didn't they? But
yes.
They got a great result. But I thought you were a little bit harsh on Liverpool this weekend, and I thought they won well in the end. Okay, Chamberlain played well on that right hand side. Jones gives them a bit of creativity in midfield, and as John says, you're bound to miss Salah and Mane, players of that capability. So 3-0. You're a bit harsh on your own team there, Eamon.
Okay, nothing new there then. Now, here's one man who won't be harsh on his own team. John, great results yesterday for Leeds United at West Ham, who are really going there. I mean, they're in the top four. I haven't seen the league table this morning, but David Moyes has done a superb job there. I would not have fancied Leeds going there. And I never heard of Harrison, really, the player who scored a hat-trick to give them a 3-2 win. I spoke to you, and I know Liam saw the match. I spoke to you, and you were waxing lyrical last night, which you don't often do.
No, well, they played last week, as you know, against West Ham, and they were beaten. But they actually put up a good show.
Yeah.
They've had a lot of injuries, like Bamford's still out, Phillips is still out, two of their best players.
Yeah.
But they did put up a good show last week. I know West Ham won. And they played exceptionally well yesterday. There was no look about it.
Yeah.
And you're talking about Harrison's been there a couple of seasons, Eamon. He came on loan from Manchester City,
right? And
he this season he's only scored about 1 or 2 goals.
Yeah.
And he got a hat trick, as you know. So he came good. He's one of those players. He's a winger, can be good, can be a bit brainless at times, but he did his stuff yesterday. But the whole team did. And, they had 2 players injured in the first half. Firbo, the fullback, who's just come into, and Forshaw, who had been injured for a couple of years, was a good player. So I thought West Ham looked a bit tired, Eamon.
Yes, yeah.
I think Leeds have had a bit of a rest,
Yeah, David Moyes went mad after the match. He said they're too much being asked of players, and he did put it down to tiredness.
Yeah, I think, see, the way that things are going, Eamon, some teams have the virus, some clubs, some don't, and you have to play the matches as they come along. But somewhere along the line, you've got to make up in the matches. They're going to catch you somewhere along the line,
Yeah.
So, but I mean, I don't blame him for mentioning it, but I thought Leeds were excellent, actually well deserved to win. They gave a goal away from a corner kick again, but then they scored from a corner kick. So I mean, in the position that they're in, Eamon, to get 3 points at West Ham was a huge day for them, and they well deserved it.
Yeah, Liam, you watched that match. He's an amazing coach, Bielsa. The movement, the lack of fear, the adventure in their play, wherever they play. It's really heartwarming. No,
they were brilliant, Damon. They were. John said West Ham might have been feeling the effects of a long, hard campaign, whereas Leeds have had a bit of a breather in recent weeks. But they've got a few players back that have made all the difference. And when they go at teams, they really go at teams. They were some of the football they play is great. I love watching Rafinha.
Yes.
He's a brilliant player. Often plays on the right hand side, comes in as a left foot. Is a really, really exciting player. I think John said it a while ago that if they get their players back, they'll be okay. And I think that's proven to be the case now. They've got quite a few players back. They could do with getting Phillips back to his best and Bamford makes a huge difference with his goals contribution. Yes. So I think Leeds will, give teams maybe some of the top teams they're going to turn them over before the end of the season, Eamon.
Okay, John, Manchester United at Villa. They haven't lost at Villa for 40-something years. They're 2-0 up with half an hour just about to go, and they blew it 2-2 at the end. Philip Coutinho came on as a sub for the last 20 minutes or so and was involved in both goals, actually, scoring the equaliser. United had a glorious chance, but they couldn't really see it out at all, could they? They were very good, I thought, in the first half, but second half, they were a mess.
Yeah. Well, it was a game of two halves, Eamon. I mean, Villa were very poor in the first half.
Yeah.
Very poor in the first half. Then they played in the second half, got on top. I mean, at half time, you wouldn't have backed Villa with bad money.
No.
But they made a huge difference in the second half. And then United couldn't handle it then. Once they got on top, they couldn't handle it at all. I think if the game had gone on for another 10, 15 minutes, or if there was going to be another goal scored, it looked odds on that Villa would do it. They had them really going at that particular stage.
Yeah.
But they hung on in the end. But it was good first half for United. But second half, and vice versa. I mean, Villa in the first half, Gerrard said it after the match, I think he gave them a right telling off at half time.
Yeah.
And they got going. And if it had gone on any much longer, I think Villa definitely would have won it. But,
De Gea, he's been player of the month for the last 2 months.
Yeah.
He was player of the season for 3 consecutive seasons not so long ago. He did lose his form in a big way. But again, on Saturday, he made some critical saves. And, of course, the Villa goalkeeper threw one in, the first goal, which really, I think, knocked the stuffing out of Villa. Their own goalkeeper letting them down. But De Gea has saved this new coach, Rangnick, some embarrassment, because they will point out, people, that they've only lost one match, but they haven't played much yet, and they don't really look as if they know where they're going.
Well, it was sort of back to square one on the weekend, Eamon.
Yeah.
There was a few players out. There's players maybe you wouldn't know, but there was, when you watch them play, like before he came in, the way he was...
Yeah, Liam, I'll just put this to you. He left Sancho out, who cost 78 million from Dortmund. Very, very good young player. I spoke to Didi about him. Didi said he's the real deal. And he played this young lad, Elanga, who played last week, actually, against Villa at Old Trafford. A game Villa should really have won. He's a young 19-year-old winger. Having him in the team, leaving Sancho out, there's a strange vibe there. Ronaldo didn't play either last Wednesday against Villa or on Saturday against Villa. And when he was asked why, he gave some very odd description of Ronaldo having some kind of hip problem. But Ronaldo came out last week and was not very complimentary about what was happening at the club.
Yeah, well, it's a bit of a mess, Eamon, isn't it? We had this discussion when Rangnick was brought in on a 6-month deal, and then 2 years as a consultant, and it doesn't bode well, I think, for the future at Manchester United. They need some stability. They need a leader as a manager, and if this guy is going to leave after 6 months, it doesn't give him a lot of authority with the players, and he has been juggling the teams around. But the alarming thing, if you're a Man United supporter, is the downturn in form of some of the really good young players they have, like Greenwood, not really made a contribution this season, Rashford, and as you say, Sancho costing all that money, and then he puts an 18, 19-year-old kid in front of him. The alarm bells must be kind of ringing, in the corridors of Old Trafford, I would say. How are we going to fix this? You've talked about the Pogba situation.
Yeah.
How are they going to fix it? I don't know. It's going to be a hell of a task to get Man United back to where they once were under Alex Ferguson. Like, winning the league more often than finishing second. That's all they ever did under Ferguson, I think, was finish first or second.
Yeah. Now,
sorry, I mean, the first thing to do, the best thing to do is get a good manager in. That's the starting point. You know, they're messing around. I mean, they've had Solskjaer there for 3 years or so. He was never going to be a top manager, Damon. And now they're messing around. They're getting somebody in on in an interim basis, which doesn't work. The players don't know where they are. Is he going to be here next year? Is he not going? They're a total mess, and they're not doing anything to do it because they. Funny enough, I read something last week in the paper, which was amazing, that somebody in the club said that the reason they're doing what they're doing, and they didn't want Conte because he was too sort of busy, you know, and they didn't have the players that suited Conte.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? They're getting it arseways, Damon.
Yeah.
I mean, you get the manager in, and the manager then sorts out what he wants and who he wants in the club. You know, they just did not want a strong manager in there. They wanted Solskjaer in there. They could tell him what to do. It was easily done. And now they got this lad in on an interim basis. And we spoke about this before, Eamon. In my opinion and experience, if you get an interim manager, players play for the manager.
Yeah.
And they play for him because it's about their contract, about are they in the team, are they out of the team?
Yep.
And they play for the manager. And everybody has to be in it together, and you get the morale. Now, if you've got this lad coming in, and he's on an interim basis, the players will be thinking, well, why do I have to play for him? And it's not a conscious thing. It's something that's there.
Yeah, of course.
Right? You know, this guy won't be here next year, so why should I be that bothered?
Okay.
It's ridiculous. Ridiculous.
Speaking of managers, John, Liam, Rafa Benitez, somebody I certainly respect. He was Liverpool manager, won the Champions League with Liverpool, and our friend Didi in the team, scoring the first penalty. Liam, 22 matches in. A lot of money was spent, but it was spent before he arrived, and he said last night injuries to Calvert-Lewin, I imagine in particular, and Richarlison, and a lack of money were the problem. But he has been dispatched after 22 games. I have respect for Benitez. He's an old school guy, but 22 games isn't a lot.
No, but they were losing week in, week out, Eamon, weren't they? You know, and I suppose there is a threshold that you cross as a man.
And they lost to Norwich, Yeah,
and they lose to the team that's bottom in the table. So, Everton has been a difficult club for a number of years. You know, it hasn't been a success, this Usmanov takeover.
No.
He's thrown money at it, but the people who've spent it, I'm not too sure who they are, whether they're managers or they're the director of football. I think there was some Dutch guy in there as director of football.
Yeah.
And they've spent absolute fortunes on players. Just for example, they paid something like 65 million for Theo Walcott and Alex Iwobi from Arsenal. You know, they're not worth that kind of money.
No. And
whoever paid that's not thinking straight. You know.
Yeah.
So that's been the whole problem, the recruitment, and going back to Benitez. Of course, he's had to work with the players that he inherited, and a very difficult situation for him. They're not good enough. And then, as you said, 2 or 3 very important players are missing with injuries, and you're snookered.
Yeah, John, 22 matches doesn't give you a lot of chance. And as Liam said, they were splashing the cash for a while. 200 million, I note, they spent very quickly when this new owner, Mashiri, came in. And 200 million, I don't want to say anything libelous. It doesn't go very far in football these days, as Liam has just pointed out with the players they bought. But poor old Rafa wasn't given the money. Now, I'd give Rafa money before I'd give it to a director of football.
Well, I think that's the big problem. I mean, he's on a bad minus starting off. I mean, ex-Liverpool manager. And he made some comments a few years ago about Everton, and you know the supporters are like they don't unless he really gets on and win the league, and then they forgive him for being the Liverpool support. But I mean, he said himself, don't forget, Ancelotti left.
Yes.
I think he was delighted to get out because, as you said and Liam said there, who's buying the players?
Yep.
And now they're buying the players and you get on with it. So the director of football, and this is what that's happening in the game, the director of football is doing it, but he's not responsible for results. It's the manager that's responsible for results.
Yep.
Who can say, well, I didn't bring them in. But that doesn't matter whether you bring them in or not. It's results, and you're going to take the blame, which has happened with Benitez. So he was on a hard start with being Liverpool manager or an ex-Liverpool manager, Eamon, from the start.
Yeah.
And then the players, he had a few injuries as well. But I don't think unless he got onto a real flyer near the top of the league now, I don't think the supporters would have had him. Anyway.
No. And they did get off to a good start, actually, at the start of the season, but that's it. Just a final word, Liam. Big game for Arsenal on Thursday night. Home to Liverpool, semi-final League Cup to get to the final and play Chelsea. It's quite a big test for them. I'd say they do their damnedest to put their best team out and have a go.
Well, I think both teams will,
absolutely.
There's not that much at stake. If you go out of the League Cup, I'm sure Arsenal would swap the fourth position in the league and go out of the League Cup. But when you're there, you're going to play for it. And it was a tremendous spirited performance by Arsenal to get a 0-0 after Xhaka being sent off. But Liverpool are Liverpool, Eamon. Even if they are without Mane and Salah, I would still make them favourites to go through to the final.
Okay, my thanks to John and to Liam. As always, everyone is delighted to hear what they think about the big issues in the game. Thanks to John Giles, Liam Brady.